and welcome back to Show Me How to Win. We're at Orange County, California in AEG House. Next to me, to my left, is John. To my right is another John. So this John right here, he's Mr. John Zinser. He is the owner of AEG. And John Clair is the designer of Space Base. So John, tell me the story behind Space Base. You're the reason why this game exists. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think I am the reason why this game exists. So when I first met John, we were working on Mystic Vale and Edge of Darkness, and we were getting together and we were playing a lot of games. And when it was my turn to pick a game for game night, I would always pick a dice game. I was kind of enthralled with Machikoro at the time and wanted to play a lot of Machikoro. John and I met in Las Vegas for conventions and stuff, and he knew like how into craps I was and the fact that I really love these kinds of games. And John's not a believer in dice, right? Like John wants to control what's going on in his game. So I don't think he ever really expected that he was going to sit down and design a dice game that would end up being what this game is. But I think that after, it was BGG, right? It was BGG after another night of me, having us sit down to play another round of Machikoro. John, had a couple of sleepless nights, and Space Base was born.
Okay, so Space Base is inspired by Machikoro, but John, you put a spin on it. So John, tell us how we play Space Base.
Yeah, so on the active player's turn, they roll 2 dice, and depending on what they roll, everyone at the table will potentially get rewards. So everyone has their own player board, which has sectors 1 through 12, and every sector has a card in it, and potentially cards tucked under your board above that sector, which happens as you play the game. So if you're the active player, you roll the dice, and you get rewards for the sectors indicated by your dice. And you make a very simple choice. Do you want to use both dice individually? In this case, I rolled a 1 and a 3. So I could get the rewards for my cards that are in my 1 sector and my 3 sector. Or I could combine the dice and get the rewards for just my 4 sector. All right, so every turn you have that very simple decision. When you get the rewards, you just track. Rewards are things like get money and victory points. And you just track them on the bottom of your board. And then the last thing you can do on your turn is you purchase a new card. And purchasing cards, there's a marketplace to buy cards. They have a cost. When you buy a card, you spend all your money on it. The card indicates what sector it goes in, and how it works is, and this is sort of the crux of the game, is whenever you buy a card, it replaces the card that's currently in that sector, and the card that was there flips upside down and tucks under the board so that there's a new ability showing at the top. So all cards, I don't know if you can see very well, but all cards have 2 abilities. They have an ability that you get when it's on your board and an ability that you get when it's above your board. So whenever you buy a new card, you create a new ability that's above your board. And and then the core here is when it's your turn, you get the abilities of everything on your board. When someone else rolls on their turn, you get the abilities of everything above your board. Got it? So on your own turn, you always get something because you have something in every sector. And on opponent's turns, you may or may not get nothing, something, lots of things, right? Depending on what sector is hit. So currently on my board, I can get stuff whenever an opponent rolls a 1. And then every turn when I buy a new card, it puts something new up top. And I get more and more things when other people roll. Okay.
So I heard we have a dice whisperer here.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a dice whisperer. I think it's strange that mathematicians think that they know how dice work. This is a show about how to be good at games, and so I want to talk to you about how to be good at dice games. Right, like the first thing you have to understand is that the dice are connected to the way you are feeling. They know what you want, and they know that if you are putting positive vibes into those dice. So my personal strategy for a game like this is to pick a section of numbers that you wouldn't normally expect to hit, and then I put my positive energy into the dice and will them to roll those numbers. I think that's actually really good advice for not just this game, but for any game where dice play a big role in the game. And I stand by it. I also believe that the dice know when you're scared. So when you're scared and you're looking at your board and you're like, oh, I should have put something on that 7. I should have put something on the 7. Boom, the dice are going to roll a 7 to punish you for not doing that, for not having confidence that they are going to help you. That's all the advice I've got for winning dice games. And space base.
So John's advice to how to win at Space Base is to believe in the dice.
Believe in the dice. Believe in the dice and build a strategy around your belief.
And to not show fear.
No fear. You can never show dice fear, ever.
And will the dice into rolling whatever it is you want them to roll.
Absolutely. I believe it works.
So that was John's advice. And now to everybody else who don't speak dice, I'm going to ask John to give me some strategy tip on how to win at Space Base. John, please help us.
So, yeah, I mean, the best strategy is to just roll good.
To will it, right? To will it.
Yeah, you I just roll well, right? That never works for me. I don't roll good. So I have to try to think my way into a way to win the game. I always root for the dice, and they usually don't go the way I want them to. But fortunately, I made this game, and there's ways to add some control into it.
Is it because you show fear?
Maybe, yes. I'm very.
He fears the dice.
I'm a very fearful dice roller. Sure. Okay, so there's a few things going on in this game, right? One of the things that a lot of people there's always, of course, probability. Anytime there's dice, there's probability. And one of the things that this does differently is because you can choose to use the sum of the dice or the individual dice. There's actually a non-linear distribution of probability here. And there's actually like a drop right at 6. So how it works is from 1 through 6, the probabilities are similar, right? The odds of rolling a 1 with 2 dice are not too different than a 6 because the 6 is slightly more because you could roll it more likely with doubles, but 1 through 6 have a similar probability. And then of course 7 and up ramp up in unlikeliness of being rolled, right? And a lot of new players don't recognize that right off the bat. They think, okay, 7's the most likely thing to be rolled with 2 dice, which in this game is not true because the individual dice can be taken by themselves, right? So 6 is the most likely, and then slightly less 5, slightly less 4, all the way down through 1, and then 7 is the 7th most likely number, then 8, etc. 12 is as unlikely as ever. So that's actually just an important, very simple thing to understand. Now, of course, baked into the abilities on the cards is their likeliness to be rolled, right? So a 12-sector card is going to be a really powerful card, whereas a 6-sector card is going to not have a super great power, but you're going to get it all the time. So there's actually a whole bunch of different ways you can approach this strategically. It's not a non-viable strategy to pick a high number sector like John likes to do and load it up with a ton of stuff.
I'm just setting up my board with the winning strategy while John's talking. So I'm going to pull up a few cards while he's showing you how to play the game.
So it's not like it. I'll go into a little bit of detail on higher level stuff. So there's a few different strategies you can do. One is pick 1 or 2 high sector cards or high sector numbers that have really, really strong rewards, right? Because they're less likely to be rolled. And try to buy cards that are all in the same sector. And the reason for that is there's other abilities in the game that give you some dice control, right? There's abilities that let you set dice before rolling. There's abilities that let you increase +1 to the roll. And if you have a couple of those abilities, you can +1 several times, right? So if I make my 11 sector have a bunch of things in it, right? Every card is super good because it's an unlikely spot. But if I can get lower level abilities that activate and let me use my 11s, right? I can power that up. And it's better to power 1 sector than multiple high level sectors, because if you give yourself the ability to control the dice, you can hit that one number more frequently, right? And if you put all your good stuff in one number, right, you're going to get it all at once, right? Now there's also some strategies around going in the lower sectors. Lower sectors, you're going to get steady income, and it's going to be much lower reward and lower risk. You're gonna get stuff much more often. You're gonna have a hard time in this game if you only buy things 7 and higher, right? Because you're gonna have some turns where you just don't have much. If you get just a couple income cards in the 1 through 6 level, you'll always be getting something, and it'll keep you in the sort of the middle tier of decent cards. And then when you hit your big number, you can get up to the 3rd tier and start really building the winning the cards that get you towards a victory. There are some strategies, though, to win in the low sector, which is really mainly about trying to get something that scores points, and it's going to be a small amount of points, but on opponents' rolls. And if you put something that scores, say, 2 points every time an opponent rolls a 5, right, in a 4-player game or a 5-player game, there's going to be a lot of 5s rolled every time the dice go around the table, and those 2 points are going to rack up quickly, right? And that's a 3rd level card to get that ability, so you might want to save up to get it. But if you can get into the lower sector and always be getting little things the whole game, right, that's another perfectly viable strategy.
Okay, so to summarize John's strategy, because I know you have something to add, because you had the perfect game right there. I think what you're saying is, because I have not played this game, because I'm not a dice whisperer. I tend to avoid dice games, but now, so I think what you're trying to say is, to summarize, is because in this game you have the ability to either do, so if you roll a 1 or a 5, you can either do 1 and 5 or 6, and you always have that ability. So it is and you can do that during other people's turn too. So if they rolled a 2 and a 5 and they decide to activate their 7, but if you have something in 2 and 5, you actually get something too. So in this case, the probability of how 2 dice, the combination is actually more at the lower range, 1 to 6, is more likely to get rolled, because you can break your dice down. And then 7 and to 12, it gets less and less likely. So you actually want to get some lower other people's, like the above abilities on the lower cards, and focus on maybe 1 or 2 sectors for your higher numbers, and using the lower cards to boost your die roll to hit that number over and over again, rather than try to spread out your cards. Also, if you can get a bunch of cards that give you points during somebody else's turn, because this game is actually a race to 20 points.
We're racing to 40 points.
Yeah, so if you're getting points on your turn and on other people's turn, you'll get to that goal much quicker. So that is basically what your recommendations are, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's depending on what cards come out, there's of course subtleties to that. But generally, yeah, if you're going on the high sectors, try to stack up 1 or 2 numbers. If you're going the low sectors, you can spread it out, try to get some points up top, so you're making progress on the points on other people's turns. Yeah.
And make sure you have some good ones. Don't neglect your lower numbers, because those are actually the numbers that are more likely to get rolled, contrary to other games. Okay, John, do you have anything to tell us? Do you have anything to add?
Well, I don't think that you can anger the dice gods by making a few smart plays, the way that, the math gods intend you to do. But at some point, you have to embrace the fact that the dice do not care. They don't care about math. They just want to roll the number that you want them to roll. So after you've started, after you've focused on John's strategies, then you have to go where your heart takes you, and the dice will win the game.
So let me ask you guys this. Who usually win this game?
Well, I would say that John probably wins more often than I do at most every game that we play. He's an excellent game player. But when I win, it's with flair and style and a surprising amount of panache.
Okay, so to our viewers, if you want to win with panache and flair, then you go with the strategy over here. But if you want to win with math and consistency, go with the strategy over here. All right. Thank you so much, John and John, for showing me how to win at Space Base. This is the first time we have two different people giving me strategies, and we'll let you choose which ones you want to use. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.